sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom. Va'ani ashiru zecha, va'ranena boker chasdecha, ki hayita miskavli umanos beyom tzali. Va'ani ashiru zecha, va'ranena boker chasdecha, ki hayita miskabli umanos beyom tzali. Va'ani ashiru zecha, va'ranen laboker chasdecha, ki hayita miskavli umanos beyom tzali. Uzi elecha azameira, azameira. Uzi elecha azameira, azameira.
Do it.
Lefanecha
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Ready to celebrate Shabbat, an amazing bar mitzvah, someone becoming bar mitzvah. This Shabbat, we are so honored and glad and blessed. Multi-generation bar mitzvah here at Beth Meyer. And to daven with you all. It's a pleasure. So we rise together on page 103 in our Sidurim for Birchot HaShachar.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sachvivina להבחין בין יום ובין לילה.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר עשני בצלמו.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בת חורים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני ישראל.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם פוקח עברי.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מלביש המרומים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מתיר אסורים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם זוקף גבובים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם רוקע הארץ על המים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המכין מצעדי גבר.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה לי כל צורכי.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם עוזס אל בגבורה.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מותיר ישראל בתפארה.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם הנותן יעב כוח.
אמן.
122.
ברוך שעמד העולם ברוך הוא.
ברוך עושה בראשים, ברוך עושה מקיים, ברוך מרחם עליו, ברוך נתן העולם.
יחיד חלמים מלך משובח ומפואר יד שמו הגדול. ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מהולל ותשבחו.
Amen. You may be seated.
So Shabbat Shalom, friends. So exciting to celebrate this bar mitzvah this morning and to daven together in our amazing way that we energetically pray and connect. There is a beautiful line, a very famous line in this week's Torah portion, Parshat Truma, that says, Ve'asu li mikdash v'shachanti betocham. God says, make for me a sanctuary, a mikdash, v'shachanti betocham, and I will dwell among them. So it's a little bit of a confusing statement. What is this them? It should be, you would think, grammatically, build me a sanctuary and I will dwell in it. But it says, among them, bitocham. So what does this bitocham mean? And of course, in Jewish tradition, there are many understandings. Rashi, the medieval commentator, believes that it was actually referring to a Beit Mikdash, a literal sanctuary. There is, of course, a value to being in this space. There's a beauty and a way that this particular space, among other sanctuaries, has a certain sense of kedusha, of holiness. There's this other idea that's offered by other commentators that when it says bitocham, it means among them. Yes, build me a space, but I will dwell among them. That is to say, God dwells in community. As Jews, we are not a religious tradition that values being alone. It's not about being up on a mountain alone, although that can be a very special experience. We really treasure what it is to be in community. And finally, there's a more mystical understanding that bitocham literally means in them, in them. That is, God dwells inside of us. And I want to suggest that all three of these meanings are true, and I feel them deeply on Shabbat. There is a holiness of this building, and for those who are not here in the building, we are caring for this space so that when we can come back together, it will be here for us to hold us in Kedusha, in holiness. We are a community, and we continue to forge bridges to help make sure that we continue to create space for God in community. And we know that even when we're not in the building and we're sort of seemingly separate from our community, that God can also dwell inside of us. It's all true. And I feel that very deeply here on Shabbat. So I hope wherever you are, that you find a way, whether in your space, your own little mikdash, or your sense of connectedness to Jewish community and this Beth Meyer community, but just even in your own heart, that you find a way to make space for God. So we're going to continue this morning, of course, with Psukei de Zimra. We'll have a chance to not only physically arrive in our seats, some of you are probably still in pajamas, that's okay, but to arrive fully with our hearts open and alive and feeling ready to connect to something greater. So we're going to continue this morning with Ashrei on page 136. 136. Ashrei יושבי ביתך עוד יעלו חסלה.
אשרי עם שככה לו, אשרי עם שאדוני אלוהיו.
תהילה לדוד, ממך אלוהי המלך, וברכה שמך לעולם ועד.
בכל יום אברכך ולשמך לעולם ועד.
גדול אדוני מולן מאוד, ולגדולתו אין חקר.
דור דור ישבח מעשיך, גבורותיך יגידו.
הדר כבוד הודיך בדברי נפלאותיך עשיך.
ועזוז נורותיך יאמרו דלתך ספרנה.
זכר אב טובך יביאו וצדקתך ירננו.
חנון רחום אדוני רחפיים וגדול חסד.
טוב אדוני לכל מרחמיו על כל מעשיו.
יודו חרני כל המעשיך וחסידיך יברכוך.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו גבורתך ידברו.
להודיע לבני אדם גבורותיו וכבוד הדר מלכותו.
מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
שמח אני לכל הנופלים וזוקף לכל הכפופים.
עיניך לך יסברו ותנתן להם את אוכלם בעיתו.
פותח את ידיך ומשביע לכל חיי רצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
קרוב אני לכל הקוראיו לכל אשר גרו ואמת.
רצון יראיו יעשה ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם.
שומר נא את כל אוהביו את כל רשעים ישמיד.
תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו וברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד.
ואנחנו נבריה ערב יד עולם. Hallelujah.
Continue on page 139. 139 with Psalm 148. This is a psalm which really invites us to appreciate this beautiful planet that we inhabit. It talks about birds and green things. And I woke up this morning hearing the birds chirping and feeling the sun shining through my window after a number of days, sort of record number of days for this part of the world of gray, and just feeling deeply, deeply grateful that perhaps spring is actually around the corner.
Hallelujah. מן השמיים, הללו במרורים, הללו מלאכה, הללו כל צבאם, הללו שמש וירח, הללו כוכב ואור, הללו שמי השמיים, והמים אשר מעל השמיים. יהללו את שם אדוני וזיווה ונבראו ויעמידם לעולם חוק נתן ולא יעבור. יהללו את שם אדוני וזיווה ונבראו ויעמידם לעולם חוק נתן ולא יעבור.
Continue with Psalm 150, page 141. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Continue with a deep breath, neshima amukah. It is that breath that we use to thank God and praise God for this precious life that we are living. We continue on page 145, Nishmat Kol Chai. Nishmat Kol Chai. Tivarech Adonai Eloheinu.
ישנים ידמים, ילף נשבק קיים, ושנם מגבלה, ראש השמיים, יצחק אותנו אלוהינו וידענו ונדענו, היו נראים ונדענו, Bottom 146.
Mid melach u'mid
ולך וירוק לך,
הגדול, הגיבור והנורא,
אליהו,
בונה שמיים וארץ, נעלה לך נשבחך נפארך נברך את שם קודשך כאמור,
לדוד ברכני שילוני, לכל רבי,
את שם
קודשו,
על בצעצמות עוזך,
הגדול בכבוד שמך,
הגימול הנצח והנורא בנורותיך,
המלך
להלל לשבח, לרומם לדרך, לעולה וכלס על כל דברי שיר ותשבחות. דוד בן ישי, אחיך משיחך.
Please rise. 148.
ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו.
מלך הגדול הקדוש בשמיים. ברכות ורמתה ולעולם.
ברכות והודאות מטבע עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני המלך גדול בתשבחות, אל הודעות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה,
מלך העולמים,
אמן. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ברמה תברך חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון ומחון, ובחיי כל בית ישראל, פגלה בזמן קריב ימרו,
אמן. ישמר רבה מבורך, לעולם ומעל מיה.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קודשה
בריחו.
לעילם מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה וימרו,
Amen.
אמן.
Page 149, ברכו.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Seated 150.
ברוך
אתה
אתה
אדוני
אדוני
אלוהינו
מלך
מלך
העולם,
העולם,
יוצר אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום ובורא הכל. הכל
יורך
יבוא
וגוי שבחוך, קדוש אדוני. הוצא הכל בטבח ויום דעת ושמזרח, מוציא חמה ממקומם ונאמר שמתם. המלך ממם ונאמר
אין כרך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מכנו לחיי עולם
הבא.
אפס פרטך גואלנו מת המשיח,
ואין
ואין
על
מלכנו
ראשנו.
לתחיית
אמן.
המתים.
151.
אל אדון
על כל המעשים
ברוך ומבורך, בפי כל נשמה גדלו וטובו, בעלי עולם דעת וגבורה סובבים אותו,
המתגאה על היות הקודש, נדע לכבוד על המרכבה, לכבוד ומישור לפני ריזו אסר ורחמים,
לפני
כבודו טובים ויורות שברא אלוהינו יצרם בדעת ובינה ובשכל, כוח וגבורה נתן להם להראות בקרב זאב, אלי זיו גינו גן האליהם,
כל
העולם זכים וזיתם וזזים ואוהב עושים ויהיה רצון קונם ערך אבות נונים לשמוע סוד הרינה לזכר מלכותו הרע לשמש בית וחורה ואינקים הבנה רבב נונים לא קוצבם מרון דיבם וגדולה סרבים ועובדני וחיות העוזר שבת כל המעשים ומשיבים כזה כבודות יבנונך עונך ושבת טוב להודות באדוני לפיכך יברכו שמך אדוני אלוהינו סלע תטבח מוכנו Top 153 האומים באומים גמורים כולם עושים אימה וביראה קונם ימיהם תורה
בשירה
זמרה ירושם ומקרים
ומריצים ומקדישים וממליכים
את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא הקדוש למקבלים עליהם מלכות שמיים זה מזה
נותנים רשות
זה לזה
להקדיש
יוזרם
ונחת
רוח
בשפה
ברורה ובנעימה שהעולם כאחד עונים קדוש 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 עונה צבאות מלוא הארץ עבדו נהיה מהיות הקודש ברעש גדול
כנסים לעומת צרפים
לעומת
החברים
וריאו כבוד אדוני במקומו ליל ברוך תנתיך חפך יעזר לשעות בעל מלחמו אור חדש
אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה לראות ברוך אתה אדוני
בשמו seat of our tally together to prepare for Shema Yisrael. Ava Avdana Eloheinu Chemlag Dora V'Dorach Madalina Binu Avanu Kein Techonen L'Rachamim L'Rachamim Dabek Di Ben
וכן אהבתנו לשמך הקדוש עלה באמת להודות לך ויחדך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני
ברוך שמו
הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה
Adonai אהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ולבדך בדרך ושוכבך וקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך וישערך. Continue page 156. והיה עם שמות לעבוד ויציב נכון היום
לדור ודור קיים שמו קיים וכיסא נכון ומלכות וממלכתו
לעד
קיים.
157 ראשונים האחרונים
אמת שאתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו ואמותינו גואלנו כל אבותינו ואמותינו יוצרנו צור ישועתנו פותנו מצילנו משול מהחיים
אלוהים זולתך זולת אבותינו ואמותינו אתה ומעולם ומשפטך אשרי איש אמת אמת יצנגתנו אלוהינו. Middle 158. Our feet together, we face Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. Pages 159 through 161, we daven together. Rest us on silent.
Adonai
Sivatai tivdavi yagidei ladecha baruch Adonai Eloheinu Eloi Avoteinu v'Imotzeinu Eloi Abraham, Eloi Yitzchak, Eloi Yaakov, Eloi Sarah, Eloi Rivka, Eloi Rachel, Eloi Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים, עונה הכל, זוכר חסר אבות ואמהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה, מלך חוזר ופוקד מושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיים איתי בדרב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, והקל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורי, ומקיים אמונתו, משני עפר, מחמוך בגבורות, ומדומה לה, ולממיד ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה.
ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני
בשמוע.
לחיי המתים.
אמן. קדש שמך בעולם, אשם מקדישי, אדם בשני הרוח, ככתוב, עד יניב לירה, הרזה, אל זה ואמר, אדון 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 אדוני צבאות, אלוהי הארץ צבאות, וכל רעש גדול אדיר חזק וימגור, ויתנזיר לאום הזרע ולאום אתה, ברוך יאמרו, ברוך יבני במקומך. מכנו תביע ותמלוך עלינו כמרגל, אנחנו לה, מה אתה תמלוך וזיו אבינו לעולם ותשכון, תגדל ותתקדם בתוך ירושלים לדור ודור ונצח נצח. עינינו זרענה מלכותך, אברהם ובשימך על ידי דוד
משיח
צדקך ימלוך לעולם לדור ודור. הללויה.
ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, בשבחך ונפנו לשני לבד, יהיה מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני
בשמו.
אל הקדוש.
אמן.
עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו
Now, Kaddish Shalem, page 167.
יתקדש ויקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
והמה דברי חוטי וימליך מלכותי, וחיי חון ומכון, ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב וימרו.
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה. בריאו אלה מנקו ברכתה ושירתה. תשפחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן ועלמה וימרו.
אמן.
תתקבץ לדון ואותון דחו ישראל. קדם אבוהון דבישמעיה וימרו.
אמן.
יהי שלום ארין שמעיה, וחיים עלינו וכל ישראל וימרו.
אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, וימרו. אמן.
So, Chevra, we turn to page 168 in our Sidurim. Invite our Bar Mitzvah to come lead us in Seder Hotza'at Torah, the Torah service.
אין כמוך אלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך.
מעלות לך מעלות כל עולמים, שמך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני לא לעולם ועד, אדוני עוז למועדך, ורד עמו בשלום. אמן. היטיב רצון הארץ ציון, תבנה אהבה ירושלים, כי אחד לבד נתנו, מלך עולם ונישא, אדון עולמים.
ויהי בנשוא אהרון, ויאמר משה,
אדוני יבוזו אליך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך, כי לציון תצא תורה, לציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים, ברוך שנתן תורה, תורה ברוך שנתן תורה, תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. Now our mitzvah leads us responsively, Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol, Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol, Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlu Adonai iti, unramema Shemo yachdav.
Lecha Adonai Hagedula, Hagevura, Tivet, Ve'anetza ve'ahod, Ihod v'shamayim u'va'aretz, Ihod v'shamayim u'va'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, Yamin ha'aseh lechol erom. Romemu, 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 Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtavavu
Kodesho, Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
Everyone might be seated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. We're now going to begin our Parsha. It's Parshat Truma, the Shabbat, as well as a special Shabbat as well.
Shabbat
Zachor, Nachon. So it's both Shabbat Zachor. That's why we have two Sifrei Torah. We're beginning with our quote-unquote regular Torah. We're on page 491 in your Chumashim, in the larger red books, where you can see copies of this PDFs. Next to the live stream, you should see a document, hopefully, that you can click onto as well. So page 491, chapter 26, verses 1 through 6. We invite this time, we honor Barry Weinstein coming forward for the first Aliyah to the Torah. Yamod Moshe Bera ben Yosef HaKohen, Omirim Chana, L'Aliyah Rishona. So chapter 26, verses 1 through 6, page 491.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam V'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam V'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bochar Bonu Mikol Ho'amim V'nosan Lonu Esther Aso. Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Ve'et hamishkan ta'aseh eser yeriot sheish moshar utchelet vargaman v'tolat shani keruvim ma'aseh choshev ta'aseh otam orach harya echad shmoneh ve'esrim ba'ama v'ruchav arba ba'ama harya echad mida achat l'chol hariyot Chamesh hariyot, tiyena chovrot isha elachota, v'chamesh yiriyot chovrot isha elachota, ve'asit halot techelet, al sifat hariyah achat, mikatza bechovaret, v'chein ta'aseh bisfat hariyah, Haki hitona b'machberet hashenit hamishim lula'od ta'aseh b'riyah echad v'chamishim lula'od ta'aseh b'ktei hariyah asher b'machberet hashenit makbilot halu la'od isha elachota Ve'asihita hamishim karse zahav v'chibarta et haryahot isha elachota bakrasim v'haya hamishkan echad.
Shekoyach.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Nosan Lonu Taras Emes V'chai Olam Notab B'sochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah.
Amen. Shekoach. Mazal Tov to Grandpa. Shekoach, my grandpa. Mazal Tov. Our second Aliyah, I invite Kathy to come forward, the wonderful religious school director and tutor. We are on page 492, verse 7. Tamud Karen Bat Avram V'Sara L'Aliyah Shenit.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam V'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam V'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol HaHamim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. ועשית יריות עזים לאוהל המשכן, אשתי עשרה יריות תעשה אותם, אורך יריה אחד, 30 באמה ורוחב 4 באמה, יריה אחת, מידה אחת לשתי עשרה יריות, וחיברת את 5 יריות לבד ואת 6 יריות לבד, וכפלת את הירייה השישית אל מול פני האוהל, ועשית 50 לולאות על שפת הירייה האחת, הקיצונה בחוברת, ו50 לולאות על שפת הירייה החוברת השנית. ועשית קרסי נחושת 50, והבאת את הקרסים בלולאות, וחיברת את האוהל, והיה אחד, וסרח העודף ביריות האוהל, חצי הירייה העודפת תסרע על אחורי המשכן, והאמה מזה בעודף באורך יריות האוהל, יסרוח על צידי המשכן, מזה ומזה לכסותו. ועשית מכסה לאוהל אורות אלים מודמים, ומכסה אורות תחשים מלמעלה.
שכוח.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shkoyach. Tov. Now we'll call for our third aliyah. Proud sister. We are on verse 15, page 493. Ta'amud Taria Shoshana bat Fishelei ben HaKohen v'fegel Chava aliyah shlishit.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Hamvarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. ועשית את הקרשים למשכן עד שישים עמודים 10 אמות אורך הקרש, ואמה וחצי האמה רוחב הקרש אחד, 2 ידות לקרש אחד משולבות אישה אל אחותה, כן תעשה לכל קרשי המשכן. ועשית את הקרשים למשכן 20 קרש לפת נגבה תימנה, ו40 עני כסף תעשה תחת 20 הקרש, 2 אדנים תחת הקרש אחד, לשתי ידותיו, ו2 אדנים תחת הקרש אחד, לשתי ידותיו, ולצל המשכן השני לפת צפון, 20 קרש ו40 עניהם כסף, 2 אדנים תחת הקרש אחד, 2 אדנים תחת הקרש האחד.
שכוח. חזק.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'hayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shkoyach. We now call the proud parents to come forward. We are in verse 22, page 494. Yamdu Fishalei ben Moshe ber HaKohen v'berachel v'fegel Chava bat Avigdor Shimon Rivka Leah l'aliyah revi'it.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Hamvarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu michol ha'amim, v'nasan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. L'ergatei hamishkan yamat ta'aseh shisha krashim. Ushnei krashim ta'aseh limkutot hamishkan. Birchatayim v'yutamim milmata yachdav v'yutamim al rosho el hatabat hachat. King yeh lishnei hamiktot yiyu v'yushmona krashim v'nehem kesef shisha asar atanim shnei atanim tachat hakeresh achad shnei atanim tachat hakeresh achad v'asit havrchim atzei shitim hamisha l'karshay tel hamishkan ha'achat v'chamisha havrchim l'karshay tel hamishkan hashenit v'chamisha havrchim l'karshay tel hamishkan l'rchatayim yama v'habriach hatichon betoch hakrashim ma'abriach min hakatzeh el hakatzeh ve'et hakrashim titapeh zahav ve'et habotehem ta'aseh zahav batim l'rachim ותיפיתה את הרחים זהב וחכמתה את המשכן כמשפטו אשר הורתה בחר.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen. Shekoach. We now invite all to please rise who are here. We're going to have the Abba is going to lift the Torah. B'vakasha. Phil, go for it when you're ready. V'zod haTorah shesam Moshe Livnei Yisrael Abi Adonai We now continue a special Shabbat. We noted it's not only Shabbat, the Parsha Truma from Exodus, but it's also Shabbat Zachor. Special Torah reading done always as we approach the holiday of Purim, because there's a bad guy in the Purim story. I'll mention his name now. We don't have any booze here on a bar mitzvah. But he is related to a tribe of Amalek, which is in the Torah. The story of Amalek is this tribe that attacked our people as they were wandering through the desert, made the promised land, they attacked us from behind. They attacked those who were weakest and challenged. So they're seen as really the epitome of evil in every generation. We're going to read about them, Amalek, here in this section here. And for that, we call the bar mitzvah himself. Yamod, 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 Bachor, bar hamitzvah. Yochan, Asheben, Fisha, Levana Kohen, Vafegel Chava, Lemaftir, Chazak. So Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 17, page 1135. Chapter 25, 17. Go ahead. Bar mitzvah.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Zachor et asher asa alecha Amalek b'derech v'tzichem mimitzrayim. Asher karcha baderech, v'asanevecha kol necheshalim acharecha, v'ata ayef yagev v'lo yarei Elohim, v'haya v'haniach Adonai Elohecha lecha, mikol oyevecha misaviv, ba'aretz asher nai Elohecha, noten lecha nachala l'rishta timcha et sefer Amalek, mitachat hashamayim, lo tishkach.
Shkoyach.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah tamet v'hayei olam nata b'tochenu baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Simita, mazel tov, mazel tov, simita, simita, mazel tov, mazel tov, simita, simita, mazel tov, mazel tov, simita. Helano, 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 ore Israel. Helano, helano, ore Israel. Helano, helano, ore Israel. Helano, helano, ore Israel. Mazal tov to our amazing bar mitzvah who's read beautifully several aliyot of Torah. Kol hakavod, Evan. Shkoyach. We're now going to wrap and dress the Sefer Torah. We're going to place it to the side. Okay. And we remain standing. Not lifting. We're just going to place it. We're going to dress the Torah. Ya, 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 ya. Ya, 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 ya. Ya, 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 ya. Ya, 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 ya. Ya, 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 ya. Maybe you see everyone. Turn out to the Haftarah, special from the book of Samuel, also dealing with Amalek and part of his journey with the King Saul. Page 1282, the first book of Samuel, chapter 15. 1282. Bakasha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratzav divrei hanamarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habacher b'Torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael hamo u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Amen.
Ko amar Adonai tzvaot pakadti et asher sam Amalek l'Yisrael asher sam lo baderech ba'aloto mi'Mitzrayim. Ata halech v'gita et Amalek v'hacharamtem et kol asher lo v'lo tachmo alav v'himata me'ish ad isha me'olel v'ad yonek mishor v'ad seh migamal v'ad chamor v'yishama sha'ul et ha'am v'yifkedem badalaim 200,000 ragli v'aseret alafim et ish Yehuda v'yavo Sha'ul ad ir Amalek v'yaref banachol v'yomer Sha'ul el hakeni lechu suredu mitoch Amaleki v'nosif chaimo v'ata asita chesed im kol bnei Yisrael ba'alotam mi'Mitzrayim v'yasarkeni mitoch Amalek v'yach Sha'ul et Amalek mechavila b'cha Ashur asher al pnei Mitzrayim v'yitpos et Agag melech Amalek chai v'et kol ha'am echarim lefi charev v'yachmo Sha'ul v'ha'am al Agag v'almeitav ha'tzon v'habakar v'hamishnim v'hakarim v'alkol ha'tov v'lo avu hacharimam v'chol ha'melecha nemivzach v'names otah hacharimu v'yehi dvar nai el Shmuel lemor nichamti ki mlachti et Sha'ul lemelech ki shaf me'acharai v'et devarai lo hekim v'yichar li Shmuel v'yizahak el Adonai kol halayla v'yishakem Shemuel likrat Sha'ul ba'boker ויוגד לשמואל לאמור בשאול הכרמלה והנה מציב לו יד וייסע ויעבור וירד הגלגל ויבוא שמואל אל שאול ויאמר לו שאול ברוך אתה אדוני הקימותי את דבר אדוני ויאמר שמואל ומה כל הצאן הזה באוזני וכל הבקר אשר אנוכי שומע ויאמר שאול מעמלקי הביאו אשר חמה העם על מיטב הצאן והבקר למען דיווח לאדוני אלוהיך ואת היותר החרמנו ויאמר שמואל אל שאול חרף אגיד לך את אשר דיבר אדוני אלי הלילה ויאמר לא דבר ויאמר שמואל הלא אם קטון אתה בעיניך ראש שבטי ישראל אתה וימשכך אדוני למלך על ישראל וישלחך אדוני בדרך ויאמר לך והחרמת את החטאים את עמלק ונלחמת בו עד כלותם אותם ולמה לא שמעת בקול אדוני וטעת אל השלום ותעש הרע בעיני אדוני ויאמר שאול אל שמואל אשר שמעתי בקול אדוני ואלך בדרך אשר שלחני אדוני ואביא את אגג מלך עמלק ואת עמלק החרמתי ויקח העם מהשלום צאן וכראשית החרם לזבוח כהת לאדוני אלוהיך בגלגל ויאמר שמואל החפץ לאדוני בעולות וזבחים כי שמע בקול אדוני הנה שמו מזבח טוב להקשיב מחלב אלים כי הדד קסם מרי ואבן וטרפים הפצר יער מעשה דבר אדוני וימסך ממלך ויאמר שאול אל שמואל לאמור חטאתי כי עברתי את פי אדוני ואת דבריך כי יראתי את העם ואשמע בקולם ואתה שא נא את חטאתי ושוב עמי והשתחווה לאדוני ויאמר שמואל אל שאול לא אשוב עמך כי מאסת דבר אדוני וימסך אדוני להיות מלך על ישראל וייסע שמואל ללכת ויחזק בכנף מעילו ויקרא ויאמר אליו שמואל קרא אדוני את ממלכות ישראל מעליך היום ונתנה לרעך הטוב ממך וגם נצח ישראל לא ישקר ולא ינחם כי לא אדם הוא להנחם ויאמר חטאתי אתה כבדני נא נגד זקני עמי ונגד ישראל ושוב עמי והשתחוויתי לאדוני אלוהיך וישוב שמואל אחרי שאול Vishtachu Sha'ul Ladonai, Ladonai, Vayomer Shemuel, Hagishu Eloi et Agag Mehelech Amalek Vayehelech Elav Agag Ma'adanot Vayomer Agag Achen Sar Marhamavet Vayomer Shemuel Kasher Shikelo Nachshim Charbecha Kentishkal Minashim Imecha Vayeshasev Shemuel et Agag Lifnei Adonai Bagilgal Vayelech Shemuel Haramata Visha'ul Allah Abito Givat Sha'ul Baruch Atanai Leheinu Melech Olam Turku Olamim Tzadik B'chol Harot Ha'el Haneman Ha'omer V'asam Daber M'kayim Shekol Devarav Emet Vatzedek Ne'eman Atahu Adonai Leheinu V'ne'emanim Devaracha V'davarachad Midvarecha Hor Lo Yashuv Rekam Kiel Melech Ne'eman V'rachaman Ata Baruch Atah Adonai
Shemo.
Ha'el Haneman B'chol Devarav
Amen.
Rachem Al Tion Ki Beit Hayenu V'la Levat Nefesh Toshia B'mhara B'yameinu Baruch Atah Adonai
Shemo.
Mesameach Tzion B'Venecha
Amen.
Samcheinu Adonai Leheinu Be'eliyahu Hanavi Avdacha Ufmalchut Beit David Mashichecha B'mhera Yava V'yagel Libenu Al Kisolo Yeshasar V'lo Yichvener Le'olam Va'ed V'lo Yinchal Orech Erim Et Kavodo Ki V'shem Kadecha Nishpat Alo Shelo Yichvener Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Atah Adonai
Shemo.
Magen David
Amen.
Al HaTorah V'al HaAvodah V'al HaNvi'im V'al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh Shenatat Lanu Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu Odim Adonai Eloheinu L'Kedusha L'Necha L'Chavod L'Tifaret Al HaKol Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu Odim Lach V'Rachim Atach Yitbarach Shemcha V'fi Kol Chai Tamid Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Atah Adonai
Shemo.
V'Kadesh HaShabbat
Amen. Shekach, Torah Bar Mitzvah. Amazing job. Beautifully done. So much laning and Haftarah and Torah. Beautifully done. So, we now go back to his Devar Torah. So at this time, in fact, if we were going to offer Devar Torah, if his parents want to come up actually and get some nachas to be nearby, because soon afterwards we're going to be offering a bracha afterwards. So this is Devar Torah for our Bar Mitzvah. He's going to focus on the Torah portion, I believe, on Shabbat Truma, and what his thoughts are and commentaries. So by all means, Evan, Rabbi for the Shabbat, go for it.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
My bar mitzvah portion is Truma and it is also Shabbat Zachor. My parasha is about building the tabernacle. The Israelites used materials like acacia wood, cloth, copper, and a lot of gold. The word gold is used 25 times in the portion. Some of the things that were made of gold were poles of acacia wood overlaid with gold, gold rings to go on the feet of the ark, and gold on the inside and outside of the ark. Why did the Israelites use gold on the inside and outside of the ark? Why did God tell them to put gold on the inside of the ark where not many people could see it? Some Jewish teachers suggest the principle toho kivaro, the outside must match the inside. Rabbi Hillel Silverman, a contemporary rabbi from California, says, this is the true meaning of integrity. A person's exterior words and deeds must reflect his inner being and character. Silverman says that the ark should have gold on the inside and outside because it's like a human being with integrity. Rabbi Bahia from Spain, who lived from 1255 to 1340, said the repetition in the verse means one's inside must match the image one creates for oneself on the outside. The sages further interpreted that to mean that Torah scholars should practice what they preach. I agree with both of these rabbis to put gold on the inside and out, that the gold on the inside and out represents people with integrity. I think the ark can be an example to all Israelites for them to be people of integrity. One rabbi named Rabbi Noach Murov is a man that displayed integrity. It started when he got a desk for his office. The desk couldn't fit through his door, so he decided to take the desk apart. When he was taking it apart, he found a bag behind one of the drawers. The bag was filled with money, $98,000 to be exact. The rabbi called the previous owner, and she said she had forgotten that her inheritance was in the desk. The rabbi was happy to return the money.
According to George Eliot, a novelist from England, our deeds determine us as much as we determine our deeds. We must make sure that our inside and outside have gold. We must have integrity and to make the world a better place. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Beautiful, Evan. Wow. Kol hakavod. You leave your papers there. Take a step just down, just in front. Your parents will be behind you. Get the nachis of the bracha. Evan. Oh my God. When we think Ledor Vador, generation to generation, it's pretty amazing to have you here. Multiple generations here on our bima, even under these crazy, challenging times. But it didn't stop you or your family from stepping forward and doing such an amazing job. You've laid beautifully. Tremendous Torah and the Haftarah beautifully. Not a short Haftarah, by the way, a long story. And an amazing reading. And this idea of integrity, you know, what it means is Tocho Kevaro, like the inside is like the outside. First of all, it's you've lived this and your family lives this. It doesn't fall far from the tree over there, I understand. But you know, it's a test of character. What it means is that the Torah should be helping us to understand how we are better in the world. It's not just performing mitzvot just because, quote unquote, God wants us to, although that's fine, and nothing wrong with that, and I like that too, okay? But somehow we want to be better. We want to do better. We want to be better in the world. And that's what you understand, your family understands. That these mitzvot, this whole Torah, is trying to help people that, everyone has their struggles. But how can we be filled with integrity, for example? How can we be more honest with each other? How can we grow, everyone of any age, to be better? And you taught that beautifully in this beautiful section. Kol hakavod, Evan. We are so grateful to you. Yasher koach and mazel tov. So we invite the mishpacha to place her talit of the bar mitzvah over his head, and they can gently put their hands on his head as we offer him the oldest bracha in the Torah. Evan, may God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you, be gracious to you. May God always look upon you and grant you peace. Amen, amen, amen. Give him a little shmush. There we go. Nishika. Mazal tov to our bar mitzvah. We now are going to turn to the Misha Berach for Cholim. We're going to open our own Kodesh. Invite all to please rise as we take moments now to reflect and honor and hold in our hearts all those who are suffering from challenges both internal and external, those who are struggling still sadly with COVID in our world and our country, those in all places who are struggling and suffering. We take time now to offer their names quietly and offer this Misha Berach in their honor. Revana la Elna, Revana la Elna, Revana la Revu Asherema, Elna, Revana la Elna, Revana la Elna, Revana la Revu Asherema. So, you're right. Forgot. We're now going to return the Sefer Torah to the Ark. Sefer Torah to the Ark. Invite our bar mitzvah to come back and help lead us with, I believe, he's going to lead us with the Hallelu. Is that correct?
Yes.
Cool. On page
3.
181. On page 183. Bakasha.
Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskalav Shema Levado.
Hodo Aretz v'shamayim, Yayarem Ger Le'amod, Zila Le'cho, Hazira Livnei Yisrael Amirovo. Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Eitz Chaim Hi. Shekoya. Kol hakavod, you may be seated, everyone. Rabbi Jenny is going to pass out a few copies of our Devar Torah to the mishpacha that's here. We're going to get ready for a little Torah discussion, Chevre. So, those of you who have been regulars for a while will know this. For those of you who are new, we welcome you to Beth Meyer and to this wonderful Shabbat davening. You can follow along the Devar Torah. We're going to study. It's in a PDF form. If you're following on the live stream, you'll see a click link opportunity next to the live stream where we'll say Devar Torah, Torah teaching of the week for Shabbat Zachor or Shabbat Truma. And others, you'll have a copy of this perhaps placed in the chat of your Zoom. You can take a look at it as well. What we're going to do here is we're going to engage in a conversation on a piece of text which talks about the Torah portion of the week. And Rabbi Jenny and I will begin that conversation, and then we will invite others to participate, primarily those that are here in the Beth Meyer new Zoom chat. We're excited to have you guys participate in. Maybe some mishpach over here with some comments, we'll say them out loud. The idea is to have kind of a conversation as much as possible. All right. Now, let's step back for a second here. What is the source of the Torah? We're going to say today, this text. We're going to have to just get a little background here and kind of wrap our hands around a question that has been asked for centuries, and it's one that I think our bar mitzvah and everyone else could easily get to, but I want to just kind of place it in front and square. Like, what is the issue? Okay. Just a few Torah portions ago, we had one of the greatest low moments in the history of Bnei Israel. What is that? That is the golden calf situation. Moshe is on Mount Sinai getting the Torah. This is supposed to be the key moment of maybe world history, Jewish history. And what are the people down below? Oy vey, they get a calf, the Egel HaZahav, and they start to worship it. And famously, Moshe comes down with the tablets, sees the people dancing, is like, oh my God, so angry. He actually throws out and breaks the tablets, and has to go back up again to do it again. So this is actually a major sin. This is a major problem. But we can understand why would our people, in this key moment, why would they take a golden calf? Well, one of the challenges of Judaism from the beginning has been that we believe and follow a God that has no form, a God that is, in a sense, invisible. So what the people were doing is saying, Moshe, you're up there, we know you're with God, so to speak, but down below, we regular people struggle with the fact that we cannot touch, feel, see, connect. It's not, our God is not shiny. We don't have, and so it's ironic to pick it a golden calf because it's something they can see and shines. Okay. So the question's been asked for generations, though, is, because it comes to the this week's Torah portion, but wait a second. This week's Torah portion of our mitzvah, beautifully read, it's very material. It's called the Mishkan. He described it beautifully in his readings. We take these poles and these hooks, and there's the cloths and the skins, and we're creating this place, as Rabbi Jenny noted, where God will dwell. So even though God still is invisible, and we don't, still, we're creating a home for God, and God's going to have it's going to take these materials, it's going to have walls, and God's going to dwell in it. I thought God has no place, no body. So why do we have to have this? Why does the Torah not describe a golden calf, God forbid, but still is kind of going in that direction towards some kind of physical, material thing where God's going to dwell? It seems to not make sense with what was wrong with the golden calf. So the rabbis for generations have asked this question. Why does the Torah say so negatively on the golden calf, but seems to say it's okay to build a house for God, which is not the same, but it seems to be going in that direction? So there's a problem here theologically. Can't God be everywhere? Why do we need to have any kind of house for God? And then why so specific in the materials for God? Okay, have I explained that question sufficiently? Do you want to add to that question?
No.
Okay, you're fair. All right. So we're going to get into this issue here around why did the tabernacle, as a commandment, be commanded to be built so soon after the golden calf when they seem to potentially have some theological inconsistencies? All right, Rabbi Jeff, you just read the verse famously about the beginning of how we're supposed to give these gifts and what we're building, the beginning.
Yes.
Baksha.
Tell the Israelites to bring for me an offering from each person whose heart is so moved, to build me a sanctuary so that I may dwell among them.
Okay, that's what we quoted before. All right. So something we're going to add in here is not only building this material sanctuary, a place for God to dwell when we thought God doesn't need places to dwell, but it says everyone to help make the sanctuary exist, to give all the hooks and that. It's not just anyone gives it. Who's supposed to give it? People whose heart is so moved. So it's adding something else in here. Why is it the only people that should give are people whose hearts are moved? The rabbis are very sensitive to this idea. Why? Because the Torah, according to the rabbis, does not add any detail in that's unnecessary. So why does it require the heart? What does that have to do with this conversation? So, unless Rabbi Jay has a comment, I'm going to go further. Okay. So, a little more background. The rabbis are going to say, oh, this heart issue, building a place for God issue, they're going to now make a connection between someone giving to the tabernacle, giving a donation, who's with their heart, and the Song of Songs. The Song of Songs is a book in the Hebrew Bible, which is later on in the back, which is basically understood as a love story between the Jewish people and God. And for those of you who have read the Song of Songs, it's usually read in the spring on Passover time, it talks about the Jewish people over here looking for God and looking for the lover and peeking in the window, and God's like running away in some other location. And they're running through the forest looking for like these two lovers, but they keep missing each other. It's kind of a hide-and-seek book where they love each other, but they're missing each other. And rabbis of the generation said this is supposed to say the Jewish people and God, that we're constantly looking for each other and missing each other. And they're going to make a comparison between people building this house for God and a few particular verses from the Song of Songs. So let's look at these verses of Songs of Songs and see if we can find what the connection is between those two things.
So I'm going to read the Hebrew quickly because for those who are regulars, you will probably recognize this. Ani sheina v'libi er, kol dodi dofek pitchi li, achoti rayati yonati tamati, shoroshi nim latal kvutzatai resise laila. I was asleep, but my heart was awake. My beloved knocks. Let me in, my own, my darling, my innocent dove. For my head is drenched with dew, my hair with the damp of night.
And the key phrase that Jenny wants to emphasize is
Libi er.
Libi er. This says, when it says my heart is awake in the Song of Songs, that is the name of our mikveh here at Beth Meyer. It comes directly from this verse. Now, what's going on here? This actually is, it doesn't say it that clearly, but this is one character called the Jewish people saying, I was asleep, but my heart was awake. Oh, my beloved knocks at the door. Who's that beloved? That's God. God says, let me in, my own, my darling, my innocent dove, let me in, like let me in your house. My head is drenched with dew, my hair with the damp of night. So basically, it's like Romeo and Juliet going on here, okay? They're she's sleeping and say, oh, I'm sleeping, and then I was woken up by a knock at my door. Who's there? It's Romeo at my door coming to knock. Okay, whatever you want to say. I don't want to get too gender dynamic, but this is the idea. It's like a back and forth. But the key word in this phrase, the rabbis are going to really like, is that you're sleeping, but your heart's awake. What does it mean you're sleeping, but your heart's awake? I think if you're sleeping, shouldn't your heart also be sleeping? So what can it mean you're sleeping, but your heart's awake? This is all questions. Background is the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the sin of the golden calf. We have this heart awake. All these are questions you might be thinking, Rabbi, what are you talking about? Okay. They are now going to bring it together in the bottom piece. Rabbi Jay, we read it together.
Yes, so now from the Midrash. In connection to this Torah portion, Song of Songs 5:2 says, I am asleep, but my heart is awake. Meaning, the children of Israel said, I am asleep, when they committed the sin of the golden calf. But my heart is awake refers to when God knocks and says, bring for me an offering, which is the verse from this week's Torah portion. Therefore, God's commandment to make me a sanctuary was a way for God to say, so that I will not be left outside.
Okay. Do you want to bring it together or want me to bring it together? What's going on here?
Well, first, just very simply.
Yes.
So the connection, of course, is being made between the sin of the golden calf and then the building of the sanctuary. And there's an understanding here that I think that part of the human condition is that we are wired to fall asleep spiritually. We get into these habitual ways in our life, and we spiritually fall asleep, and then we make mistakes, hopefully not as severe as the golden calf, but we find ourselves worshiping other things or losing perspective on what's really important or falling away from our most wholesome habits. And then we remember our heart is actually awake. And then we find ourselves back in connection, back in relationship. And that dynamic of falling asleep and waking up is really the human condition. It's what we're wired for. So it's both a reminder that we can fall asleep, or that we will fall asleep, we do fall asleep, and that we have this built-in capacity to wake up and reconnect.
So just to bring it back to what the rabbis are saying here then, again by implication, is saying, when we committed the sin of the golden calf, we spiritually
Fell asleep.
When God asks us to build a mishkan and build a sanctuary, God's basically saying, wake up. I want you to wake up. And when the thing of this sanctuary, imagine this, it's like God's at the door there saying, knock, knock, let me in. So in fact, the sanctuary itself is not required, but it means essentially that we're in a space that God wants to be in there with us. It's like God is our alarm clock. And God says, I think I get it now. You might need something, a space for me to dwell so that I can be with you and kind of help you to get up in the morning. I'm using it as a joke, but seriously, to keep you awake. I want to keep you alive and in relationship with me. When I sin, when I make mistakes, I'm spiritually asleep. When God is with me, in the Mishkan, in our house together, then God makes sure, helps me to stay awake. So when the verse says that God was knocking at the door, my beloved knocks at the door, it's like saying, God's saying the Mishkan serves as a way of knocking on our head to wake us up in a kosher way.
Yeah, then the Mishkan serves as a structure
Yes.
to hold that sacred relationship. So it's not so much that the building is the waking
Critical,
up,
right.
but the building allows for a space so that we can remember to wake up.
Exactly.
And be in that intimate relationship, be in connection.
So now I want to come back and say, one of the powerful things, so what is this really saying? It's saying that in addition to Rabbi Jenny was saying that a lot of life is spent spiritually sleeping, okay, and that waking up is the goal of religion in general, but certainly of Judaism. Do a mitzvah is to wake us up. But even when you walk into this physical sanctuary here at Beth Meyer, right, the idea is on the way driving from Cary, maybe you cut someone off on the Beltline. God forbid never the Weinsteins would do this, right? That would be spiritually asleep, okay? But when you walk in these doors, technically this piece of land is the same piece of land as across the street. But it's not, right? It is a sacred, dedicated space that should wake us up with the Aron Kodesh, with the Ark, with the Torah, with the rituals, with the history of this sanctuary. This family particularly appreciates the history of this place. It should awaken spiritually so that we act better and become spiritually alive. That space actually can help you to, quote unquote, wake up. It's not, quote, it wasn't, in some ways you'd hope, ideally you wouldn't need it, but the truth of human beings is we do need it. Space matters to us. So God says maybe the golden calf I don't want, but I recognize a space will help you spiritually to get into relationship with me. Therefore, go ahead, make spaces, and let me enter those spaces, and let's be together in those spaces together.
And what's beautiful is that there's a physical element that we're talking about here, creating this space in which there's room for God, right? There's no room for God in the golden calf.
Right.
There's no room for God in Mitzrayim, in Egypt.
Yes.
There is room for God in this physical space we create, and in all the spaces we kind of hold inside. I was thinking this week about Shekhinah, the word that we call for the feminine aspect of God, this very intimate, very personal manifestation of the divine that we feel imminently with us. That Shekhinah comes from the same word from Mishkan, of indwelling. And that dwelling can also be inside of us. So it's a reminder for us to make space for God. And that space could be, here in a dedicated space like a synagogue. And it can also be in this sort of holy temple that is each one of our bodies and souls, to make space for that Shekhinah to whisper to us, to to be in relationship with us.
It's like God's knocking on our heart too and knocking on our soul. But
Literally.
the question is whether we're going to let God in. That's really the question. Is fundamentally is that sleeping means you're in a place of lack of awareness and lack of openness to it, whether physically or in a deeper spiritual inside your heart. Both
And
places.
I think it implies that wherever we are awake,
Yes.
wherever our heart is alive and broken open, the Shekhinah dwells.
Yefeh. Yefeh.
When we are closed, when we are spiritually asleep, there's no space for God.
Yefeh. Yefeh. All right. So this dynamic of being spiritually awake or spiritually asleep, that the synagogue or sanctuary or tabernacle or mishkan was a place where God said basically, I can dwell with you there. I'll give you almost a compromised place, but that's where I want to keep you awake. I want to know if there are any comments about this issue of asleep, awake, tabernacle as a compromise. First of all, for anyone here in the sanctuary here, does anyone here want to say anything from the Weinstein family? Don't feel any pressure. We have some comments here from the chat. All right, I'm going to jump here onto our chat here. Oy Vezmer,
And just as it, bringing it back to the, as Eric finds that, the pshat of the Torah portion, the simple meaning, when we go back to whose heart is so moved, the idea is that your heart, this is a place for your heart to be awake. By the way, you can fall asleep in synagogue.
Exactly.
Right?
It's true.
So
God forbid.
Right,
Yes.
right. We don't want it, but we still love you. You can fall asleep here, and places can fall asleep and sort of get into rote habit and forget that our aliveness, our sense of heart, open-heartedness is the critical connection to experiencing God.
Absolutely. All right, couple comments I'm just going to go through here.
What?
Leah Pollack says, like when you suddenly realize what you have and you show gratitude, for example. Or Sharon Mills, I wonder if it's a difference between the heart and the mind. Our mind tells us to move through our days, being productive, taking care of our daily lives, taking care of the minutiae of our days, working, cooking. Our heart is our soul, realizing our need for spiritual beings to take care of. Yefeh. Leah says, structure, like an anchor, giving us patterns or practice to help. Clear reminder to keep us grounded in gratitude. Here we got more. I understand that God is Pilar. I say God, after the incident of the golden calf, understands that God's people are human and need a physical ways to get into their spirituality. Yefeh. Very well said, Pilar. Deborah Goldstein, human beings need concrete visual reminders, connections with that which is impossible to touch or see. When we see or enter that space, we are reminded, awakened to the larger spiritual world which we cannot see or touch with our physical senses. Yefeh. Harry Polstad, free will offering, heart awake through dreams. Mishkan is an attractive place for people to congregate to worship Adonai. Yefeh. Leah offers, Deborah, multi-mold, adding the idea of you can use all your senses into this. Steve Sheriff, pretty clever to create a space versus an idol. Brings us closer without creating the idol. Exactly. It's kind of a compromise position.
And by the way, for all the people at home, we think about our homes also as a mikdash me'at, a little sanctuary. We need those structures too, right? That structure can also contain Kedusha, an opportunity to connect to God in our homes.
Yefeh. And Amy Rips says, our teacher, to what Steve and Pilar offered, I think God learned. But with the golden calf, we were mindless and part of a mob. God now asks that we be mindful using our hearts and basically do the same thing, build a physical something to see. Yefeh. So it's channeling our human desire to have something, but channeling it in the right way. That's the issue.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, this idea of that Amy was talking about is zichira, remembrance.
Yefeh.
There's this notion, and I think we see this in Song of Psalms, like it's the nature of things for us to fall asleep, which is a metaphor for forgetting. We forget all the time, which is why we have a mezuzah on every door, hopefully, to remind us of how we want to behave in a space. And these spaces can help us remember what needs remembering.
Exactly. Amy says, adds, and the Mikdash Ma'at, the Jenny mentioned, the building a spiritual place, and that God will dwell among them. We all have to build our spiritual spaces within our homes, and together we become a community from our individual spiritual spaces.
Nice.
Kol hakavod. Pilar and Steve, perhaps the people were not getting the message through the lecture format. So God, as a good teacher, switched to experiential learning by having them build a tabernacle. It's also a team-building exercise. Kol hakavod, Pilar, the educator. Wow, that was awesome. I love that idea. It is totally a team-building exercise. So I want to just say, I think it's beautiful. Like, I want to say even one more challenge around this, as Jenny said. What happens when you're in the shul all the time, right? Like, one of the things that again, I've told people about this before, like, we haven't been here forever because of COVID, but it's such a privilege to be in the shul and in the sanctuary a lot. It's a privilege. But it's a challenge sometimes because you can start to get accustomed to like having the Torah out or accustomed to being, I have a sense of awe, but when you do it a lot, nearly anything, can become normalized. That is one of the challenges of spiritual practice. How do we look at the mezuzah on our door that we enter? Please God, we have a house, 3, 4, 5 times a day, and not just go, this is a mezuzah. How do we take the time to kiss it, to seriously open and become awake? That is one of the greatest challenges of life. How do we become awake to the love we have for our children when many times we find them challenging? Okay, how do you stay awake is the lifelong challenge with every entity, God, people, even the Torah. And that's also helpful is to use practice, breathing, awareness practice, also through others. The gift, when I see a bar mitzvah like this mensch, okay, giving amazing teaching about tochel kivaro, inside like outside. I'm like, I've heard that teaching, somebody that's amazing, but he brought it alive. I think integrity. We need to, that's a great thing to remember. That text is alive, kol hakavod bar mitzvah. That's what we need to do is how do we all take something that might become normal that we don't want to become normal. We want to keep it special as much as possible.
Yeah, I was remembering that just as Evan chanted for us this morning about the colors of and the texture of the parochet, of the curtain in the ark, literally said in the Torah that it would be blue and purple and crimson, which I'm sure the artists considered in weaving together the curtain on our ark. But again, it was a reminder. I mean, I look at this curtain all the time. I come through this space.
Exactly.
But as he chanted those words and I looked at our parochet, it became alive for me again, this unbelievable connection that we have as a people over thousands of years. The point to me is also that we need reminders all the time. These practices, these traditions, mitzvot, are physical objects, no longer golden idols, but these physical objects. This family also took great care and love in creating their own talitot. Thank you, Mom. And
that brings it alive too.
All of it. These are openings for awakening our hearts.
So I want to come back and say, this basic idea, why build the tabernacle? It seems to have similarities. Well, no, it's basically a model saying, we get the fact that you have this desire, but it went the wrong way. But the idea of staying alive, staying spiritually awake, seeing holiness around, this is the ultimate challenge. And so, yeah, we sleep a lot, but our heart can be awake. Can we keep bringing us awake as much as possible is the challenge. Shkoyach. Kol hakavod. Awesome discussion. Great job to our friends back on Zoom. We now invite our bar mitzvah back to the bima as he is going to lead us in the Musaf davening. We rise together on page 184 for Chatzi Kaddish.
Yikada v'ikada shemei rabba.
Amen.
Ve'alma divrach yurtev yamlich machutem.
B'chayechonu yomechonu
Chayedecho Beit Yisrael.
Ba'agala
Uvizman kariv
Amen.
Yesh
Me'rabba
Yibarach v'ishtabach v'pa'ar v'rumam v'itnaseh v'hadar v'tala v'talal shemei dekudisha brichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shiranta
Tushbechata v'nefemata na'liran v'amah. Amen.
So have we place our feet together. We face the ark towards Jerusalem. Pages 185 to 187 together. The rest is done silently.
Adonai sifatai tifta ufi yagi tehilatecha baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzhak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Yisrael Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei
Ha'el hagadol hagibor v'hanara
אל
עליון
עליון,
גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גול לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר פוקד ומושיח ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן
פוקד
צרה, אתה גיבור לעולם עניים, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח הוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מלחמוך בעל גבורו, ומדום אליו, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
אמן.
נערי תקדישך, כזוזיה שרפי קודש, המקדישים הקודש, הכתוב על ידיך, וכרז קדוש 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 כבודו מעלה
מעלה עולם כבודו,
כבודו מעלה
עולם כבודו,
כבודו מעלה עולם, משרת שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו, שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך ממקומו, יפן כרחמים, יעולם, המייחדים שמו, ערב הבוקר, בכל יום תמיד, האמנים באהבה, שמע אומרים, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני הוא אלוהינו, אבינו, מלכנו, הוא מושיע והוא ישעינו, ברחמיו שנגננו חיי, להיות אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ולדברי עושך תגלם, תמלוך הללויה, דור ודור נגיד גלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך להנה מפינו לא ימש לעולם ועד. כי אל מלך קדוש וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
אמן.
Say shalom bimromav.
Say
Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael
Imru, amen. Yaseh shalom,
Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu
al kol Yisrael. Imru, amen.
Amen. Page 203.
Yikara v'ikra shemei rabba.
Amen.
Yivrachar teva mechmachotei b'chaychon uv'yomachon uv'chayei decho be'Yisrael. Ba'agalav yizman kariv v'imru,
Amen.
Yehi shmei rabba mevarach, le'olam olam me'ol maya yitbarach.
Yibarach v'yishbach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yit'ala v'yithalal shemei d'kudesha
B'richu.
le'elam min kol berachata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru.
Amen.
Tizkabal tzolchon uv'uthon dechol Yisrael kanam avachon v'yishmaya v'imru.
Amen.
Yehei shlomo rabba min shamaya v'hayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ba'agalav v'imru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru.
Amen.
Ein Kelohenu.
Ein Kelohenu,
En kadonenu, en kemalkeinu, en moshienu, micheloheinu, michadonenu, michemalkeinu, michemoshienu, dodel Eloheinu, dodel Adonenu, dodel Malkeinu, dodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shiktiru Avoteinu, Lefanecha Etorah Hasamim Aleinu Leshabeach Adon HaKol Lateit Gdula Yotzer Breshim Shelo Asanu Kirei Aratzon Shelo Samanu Mishpachot Adonai Shelo Samchem Kirkahem V'goralenu K'olam Olam V'anachnu Korim U'mishtachavim U'modim Lifnei Melech Melech HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Kakatu v'toratecha anayim lach le'olam va'ed. V'ne'emar v'chaya Adonai le'melecha kol ha'aretz. Bayom ha'hu, bayom ha'hu, yeh Adonai echad. U'shemo, u'shemo, u'shemo
Be seated, everyone. We turn to page 207. Those in mourning observing a yard site this Shabbat, we invite to rise for Kaddish Yatom. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam olomei almaya. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה והחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו
Amen.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Be seated. We invite now our bar mitzvah and Mora Kathy to do some gifts.
right, congratulations, Evan. You feel good?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Evan is the first student that I did completely online. We only met on Zoom. But if you've spent any time with Evan, you know that that does not change the fact that the energy comes through. We spent some time this morning talking about, our mind takes us through our day. I think Sharon Mills is the one who said it. Our mind takes us through the day, but our heart is what, kind of opens us up to what's really going on and to embrace what's going on. Evan's heart is always open.
Oh, thank
He's
God.
ready for everything all the time. So I hope as you stand here today that you know that not only is your family proud of you, but your Beth Meyer family is proud of you. And we have some extra things today. So we have mezuzah and parchment from Men's Club and Sisterhood. We have a copy of the Tanakh, so you can learn all the rest of the Torah readings now, and a certificate of Bar Mitzvah from the Beth Meyer Board of Trustees. And Evan is a Ramah Darom kid, so he has also a copy of Siddur Sim Shalom from Camp Ramah, and they would like me to read part of this letter. Dear Evan, your entire Ramah Darom family is so proud of you today as you become a majority member of the Jewish community. It is our hope and prayer that as you grow in the observance of mitzvot, the acquisition of Torah, and the performance of ma'asim tovim, good deeds, that you will become an active leader in the Jewish community, not only for today, but for the future as well. Mazel tov on reaching this milestone.
Mazel tov.
All right, congratulations.
All right, mazel tov, mazel tov. Okay, a couple quick announcements here. Purim is coming, as we know from Shabbat Zachor. So Monday, 7:30 p.m., get on, we have a Zoom program at the shul, Hamantash and tips and tricks. Then, Purim, later this week, family service Thursday at 6 p.m., and Megillah reading and fun at 7 p.m., both are on Zoom. Special Purim meal, you'll be at home, of course, but we'll have Purim meal together, a little Hamantashin together, nashing, and little stuff like that. It's Friday, this Friday before Shabbat, 11:30 to 12:30 during the day. Minding your mental health during COVID. It's such an important issue. Our Raleigh Jewish Family Services and Beth Meyer together co-sponsoring this virtual program to learn some tips for promoting good mental health. This presentation is by NAMI, which is a national organization for helping those with mental illness and challenges, thank God. We have an Israel Opportunity Expo, March 3rd. It's about a couple weeks from now, 5 p.m. Spend the evening learning from some amazing Israel-based organizations about which program in Israel is right round for you. God willing, we will make it back there soon, please God. Whether you are interested in a gap year, a college summer fellowship, or an opportunity for after college, this expo is for you. Reminder, we have 2 weekly minions, Sunday morning at 9, Wednesday at 7, and of course Friday night Kabbalat Shabbat at 8 p.m. on YouTube and Zoom. You can see those on our announcements. Anything else, Kathy? Does that sound good? Sure, all right. Closing, we turn it back to our bar mitzvah for Adon Olam, the whole mishpacha. The whole mishpacha, page 211, for Adon Olam.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'Ter Kol, do-do-do-do, Yitzir Nivra, Ding Dong, Li'et Nasa, V'Chesed Azar Melech Shelo Nikra Adon Olam, V'Ya'arei, Kichlot HaKol, Levado Yimloch Nara Adon Olam, V'Hu Haya, V'Hu Haveh, V'Hu Yeh V'Tivara Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'Terem Kol, do-do-do-do, Yitzir Nivra, Ding Dong, Li'et Nasa, V'Chesed Kol, Azar Melech Shelo Nikra Adon Olam, V'Hu Echad, V'Ein Sheni, V'Hamshilo L'Hachmira Adon Olam, V'Li Reshit, V'Li Tachlit, V'Lo Ha'odam Yisrael Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'Terem Kol, do-do-do-do, Yitzir Nivra, Ding Dong, Li'et Nasa, V'Chesed Kol, Azar Melech Shelo Nikra Adon Olam, V'Hu Eli, V'Chai Lo Ali, V'Tzor Gavili Yetzara Adon Olam, V'Hu Nisi, U'Manos Li, Menat Kosi B'Yom Nekra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Shalom Asher Malach B'Terem Go Yisir Nivra Ding Dong Liet Nasa B'Chesed Kol
Azam Hashem Nira Adon Olam.
Ado
Afkid Ruchi
B'yet Yishan Le'ayira
Adon Olam.
Im Ruchi
Yariyati
Adonai Nira
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Ding Dong Liet Nasa B'Chesed Kol
Yasha Koyach and Kiddush from our bar mitzvah.
Kain Baruch Adonai et Yom HaShabbat v'yikadshechu sabrich
L'chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Mazal Tov. Shabbat Shalom. This concludes our service. We'll have extra time for the Mainzi Mishpacha to hang out with their friends on Zoom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone at Beth Meyer. Mwah.
There